Norwich Confidential with your hosts, Dr. Ben Hong, Bonnie Hong, and Mr. Bob Farwell. Good evening. I'm Bonnie Hong.
And I'm Ben Hong. And yesterday we had an exciting day because it was election day for the city of Norwich and throughout the United States, of course, for its community. But we want to congratulate, of course, the winners. And the winners that had been, of course, came to our shows and have introduced themselves to you and had discussed what their qualifications are to run either the City Council, Board of Education, or the Treasurer. And so we're congratulating them for a job that they are going to be going into. So we're not giving them awards yet, not like what we did with President Obama, give him a Nobel Peace Prize before he even stepped one foot in the White House.
So hopefully we'll have them back on
and
in maybe six months.
And we'll have them explain to you as to what they have accomplished, because we're going to hold them responsible for and accountable for anything that we may not want to see happening in Norwich. And we, of course, want the progressiveness to continue.
Well, one of the things that happened off camera during those interviews was that each one was given a copy of the Norwich anti-corruption resolution, and they were all offered the opportunity to actually sign a legislative endorsement as a candidate running for elected office. They could have just signed the endorsement.
Some of them did sign.
There were a few.
And some of them are taking it seriously, and it's a principle, and to set the tone that they would not support any form of corruption in the city government. And of course, corruption can come in many ways. Sometimes it's nothing more than just a seduction of somebody to go onto your way.
Seduction, huh?
Exactly. So that is what is happening. But Norwich is such a small city. But I think
you and I both know that it does happen.
It does happen, and I'm sure that it probably happens in a committee of 3 people also.
It could. But I think we do extend our congratulations to them, and we hope that when they do have an issue, we're one of the first that they call so that they can come on and explain.
And we want them to, of course, discuss whatever issues they might have, and have the City of Norwich citizens be involved and be transparent about whatever is that they will be the intent on doing.
Right.
So in any case, enough of that.
Tonight we are going to begin discussing maybe the third political network. We had a chance to vote for Democrats and Republicans, but there is a very secret third political network that is controlling much of what happens in Washington. And Ben has the first part of that story. Ben?
Well, we're going to show on your channel what it is. But anyways, we are going to be talking about super PAC, because we keep on yapping about super PACs in our show, and we really don't know who they are or what we mean by that, and what kind of influence are they really exerting to our elected officials, primarily in the national positions like U.S. senators, U.S. representatives, and primarily also the presidency. And I was looking at this item in a website called campaignmoney.com. Now, you can probably Google in any of the things that you want to know in any of the internet, and they will show you some figures of this and some figures of that. But this is a very comprehensive analysis of how money was raised and where it's going to. As a matter of fact, you can even use your zip code 06360 to find out how many in Norwich contributed how much, and why our state representative really won't give us a second look, because if you compare how much total we gave each year to itself, the party, and compare it to cities like, or towns like Fairfield, Connecticut, well, we're way behind.
Well, what about the larger donations that we hear about?
So let's look at the large picture, of course, and you probably may have heard about the Cox brother and this new guy, Carl Icahn from Apple, who holds a major shareholder of Apple. And you say, well, what are they doing? Well, they found they are able to organize around 2004 some organization primarily just to raise money to donate to the candidates of their choice. But a lot of times those candidates of their choice goes along party line. So of course there is a super PAC group that would put their money 99.9% to the Republican candidates, and also there's another group of super PACs that would give their money 99.9% to the Democrats. So let's identify who they are. The super PAC founded by the Cox brothers in 2004 has something like $1 billion in their fund. And during the presidential year election, that kind of peaks up to so many $1 billion. And of course, these are groups of people that will contribute to that super PAC fund, and they really hold that money and show their strength through that money. And so they would put in the money to their candidates, and especially the highest places that the office is being contested.
I think one of the places we could see what the Koch brothers did in the 2012 election, they spent, what was it, $400 million in placing Republicans in the Senate and in the House?
Yes, we have those figures, and you can break it all the way down to the single cent. Of course, these are the things that are transparent, and these are the things that showed up in the reporting. So yes, we do have that. We do have those figures as to how much money they are really using. And at the same time, George Soros, who supports only Democrats, do have the same amount of money. So this, folks, is just like gambling. When you have a poker game, you know, you put in as much as you have on the table, and the other guy will also put in as much as they can on the table, and they are never going to be running out of money. So, and the reason for this is because we have a cottage industry, and the cottage industry in this country is called election, and every 2 years we go through that. So we raise a lot of money, we spend a lot of money, but it's raised only here in the United States, and it is spent only in the United States.
That's not
actually,
quite
we don't
true.
know about the foreign contributions.
Because, I mean, if you look at, let's just take, for example, we're familiar with Hillary's top 5 contributors so far this year. Her top 5 contributors are 4 of the major global international banks, and the 5th one is an international law firm in 30 countries. Well, now you can't say that the money that is coming from those banks is strictly American money when they have branches all over the world.
So I will congratulate Hillary Clinton for bringing in funds,
foreign funds
to
buy our
to
government?
invest in our country.
While we continue speaking, let's begin to look at. I'm giving our crew a little heads up.
So, well, before, yeah, go ahead. The thing that Bonnie was telling me about is because of this new super PAC that is being formed by this person by the name of Carl Icahn, and he's a major stockholder of Apple, and he, in his own money, put in $150 million to start his super PAC fund.
And this is what the super PAC is able to do.
And that basically is what it wants to do.
Well, all of those corporations, like with the Koch brothers, their recent gala event at the beginning of the year actually brought in 300 of their members that were all those corporations. The end result This is what happens when you let government control that much of your money. Our retirement, just as an example, the retirement in this country for people who are working for those companies, for many of them, have no retirement at all. We have 100 CEOs. Just the retirement income for 100 people, it equals more than the retirement of, I think it's 49% of all American families. This is the Yummy Corporation, I think, Yum Corporation, Taco Bell. They have a number of different fast food chains. They receive zero amount for retirement, zero. But their CEO, I have his figures somewhere, and when we start talking, okay, his retirement is $49.3 million. That will give him a check every month of $277,686 every single month for retirement.
Well, he's just like...
$280,000 a month.
Well...
And not one single employee has a penny put into their retirement?
That really doesn't go far when you spend it money.
Well,
Anyways, we're kind of getting sidetracked because what we're talking about are just this few, maybe 0.1% of the people that live in the United States. And you're talking about something like 158 families forming this super PAC. And basically, you wonder, well, why are they doing this?
That's the new super PAC you're talking about?
I'm talking about the new super PAC. So the issue is, well, why are they doing this? Well, they're making campaign donations, and their campaign donation goes to the candidates that they like to win. Why is that so? Because in this case, like Mr. ICANN is concerned, he wants to influence Congress to do something about the profit that their company makes outside of the United States. And the way it is right now is that these companies do make a lot of money, profits outside of the United States, but they are U.S. corporations. Now, as long as that money stays outside of the United States, that is not a taxable income. However, if they do bring that money in, then they will be taxed. So ICANN is trying to figure it out, well, with Apple having $181 billion sitting outside of the United States, maybe if we can just convince our Congress to lower down this tax rate or make it easier for us to bring it over, then we'll probably do well. Well, a lot of that are happening also, not just Apple company, but also Coca-Cola. Remember that in the news that Coca-Cola owns the IRS so many billions and so many billions of dollars, and the reason for that is because they were assessed on their taxes that they made outside of the United States. And they said, well, we haven't even brought this money into the United States yet. How come you're already assessing us for this tax money that we're supposed to do? So basically, there is always something that they want.
And what they want is more money.
Well,
because $280,000 a month for their retirement is not enough for them to survive on. Then this is, when you look at this, it is disgusting.
Bunny, this is a guy thing. This is something that you won't understand. So you have two super billionaires on each side, and their ego is so high that they're going to say, well, look, if the Koch brother is going to put in $1 billion, George Soros is also going to put in $1 billion. If you
and now Carl is going to also has to put in that.
That's right. But if you really look at this campaign money.com, you will notice that whatever somebody on this side gives to the right, the other person on the left will also give. And you can see that they are really trying to manipulate each other so much, but to them it is probably nothing more than a game, and it is probably nothing more than just an ego trip. But to a lot of people, hey, it makes or breaks their livelihood, and it makes or breaks their ability to earn profits, or like you said, to get their investment and get the retirement fund funded.
Right. Well, the investments for a lot of people, when these super banks gambled with everyone's money and we had the economy collapse, again, remembering the federal government did absolutely nothing when we know that there was fraud. Most of the banks had penalties to pay. AIG had penalties to pay. They all had to pay some penalty as well as, but we still bailed them out. We weren't bailed out when the homes were foreclosed because we owed the banks money. None of that happened. They took our jobs. They bankrupted the country, put us into a recession. Not one person went to jail for that. Not one. Even today, you still can't. They can pay a fine. It's like the fines that were recently paid for the fraud. I think they paid like $3.2 million. The pharmaceutical industry, the fraud that pharmaceutical industries have perpetuated because they actually didn't do testing on drugs. So they're fined maybe $3 billion when they're making $44 billion in profit. You know, I mean, the problem is that when we can allow these corporations to buy the votes of these senators from both the House and the Senate, they're all bought.
Well, let me follow that trend of thought of yours, Bonnie, because you're saying, well, they are bought, and they're being bought by big companies, and especially these big super PACs that we just identified. So let's say, for instance, that we pass a law that says it is that we're now going to ban any major, contribution from anybody. So
and Citizens United.
The only amount that you can or you may contribute is $1 or something like that. Well, the problem is that nobody in the citizens will want to donate money to a political fund in the year. Now, the average...
Say that again. Wait a minute, say that again. Why wouldn't people want to donate to a political campaign?
Because it is in your article there. If you look at the article on this very last paragraph, it says that only about 1/4 or 1% of the American population contributes more than $200 to a political organization or campaign. And only 0.04% give more than $2,600 in any election cycle. That amounts to something like 2 out of 5,000 people. So primarily what they're saying is that in the city of size of Norwich, only 7 people give $2,600 to a political campaign, and that is not much.
No, it's not.
So if you are going to say, well, we're going to be like some of our politicians that says, well, we're not going to accept super PAC money.
There's only one politician out there
I will just
saying
depend
that.
on your $10 and $15
Right,
and
but
contribution.
Please remember, there's only one.
He's not going to get elected.
Wait, hold on.
Because he needs money to make himself visible.
And I think that one of the things that has occurred is that with that particular candidate who will not accept PAC money, he has raised almost as much money as Hillary Clinton. Because, yes, people have recognized that the entire country is sold. We're selling off our country to these corporations that can then, their policies that they insist on having pushed through Congress, drastically affect the lives of every single American citizen. That can't continue. And I think when you start looking and realizing that, yes, you can have a candidate that does not accept PAC money, when you know that a candidate is not bought, will not be influenced, will not allow a revolving door, because that's the other way that all of this influence works. It's not just that the pharmaceutical companies, I did look at a few of them, the amounts of money that they provide to candidates, our state senators, our state representatives. There were 3 top state representatives that seemed, well, number 1 state representative in Connecticut that gets most of the PAC money is Jim Himes from, I forgot which district he is, but he's down in Fairfield. He votes for everything that will benefit business, no matter what. I mean, he was all for not having a Glass-Steagall. He wanted to let the banks, the investment companies go back and continue doing their gambling. So he's the number 1 representative in the state that gets most of the money as a Democrat, because he will vote with the Republicans.
Well, maybe he really believes in having business, an open business forum, because we need some of these businesses to create jobs.
Shall we? Wait. That's a great. Wait a minute. That's a good segue, just to talk about the free market, because that's another. You know, I don't think there is a candidate that's running. There's not one candidate that's running that wants to destroy our system of capitalism. But just remember, capitalism is an economic system. It's not a political system.
No.
But wait a minute. Let me just. I can quickly explain capitalism so even a second grader can understand it.
Well, I'm a 5th grader, so
okay,
explain it to me.
I'll explain it to you. Capitalism is a free market, right? A free market is you can own something, you can manufacture it, and you can sell it.
And make profit.
And make a profit. That's capitalism. But capitalism, in order to work, needs to have rules and regulations.
Correct.
That's where government comes in. Then, again, what happens when these guys, all of these big corporations that keep saying we need free market, we need free enterprise, buy off all of the senators, buy off the majority of the senators and representatives in Washington who are making the rules and regulations for a free market. They're already bought. Guess what the rules and regulations then say? That all of those rules and regulations only benefit these multi-billion dollar global corporations, and then they let something like the Export Bank, which small, medium-sized businesses that depend on it to help with their exports. Let's just say we have Sheffield that makes toothpaste in New London, okay? They know that they could export their toothpaste, but now that the Export Bank, their charter was not renewed, it's been almost 2 months or 4 months since the Congress let the Export Bank's charter expire. So now the Export Bank can't do business with small companies like the one in New London or the ones up in Plainfield. But these guys, they don't care. They're not going to the Export Bank to get their money so that they can export their product. Apple doesn't need to go to the Export Bank. They have more profits already than they know what to do with. And they're dying to bring them back so that not to build factories here, not to create jobs here. No, they want to bring it back because that's more profit for those people at the upper echelon of the corporation.
Well, you've lost me, Bonnie, because you kind of went all over the place.
You didn't understand
primarily
that?
what you're saying is that capitalism is a form of practice which is really not a government, but it's just a practice of being able to create or sell or manufacture a product, and at the same time expect that there is going to be a profit.
Absolutely,
And
but
at
you
the
still
same
have to
time,
have rules
the
then.
rule is that because there are competitions, that the rule has to be made in such a way that both or 3 or 4 will be following the same rules.
Everybody should
so
be
that
following
everyone
the same.
will be equal in an equal footing. However, if somebody comes in and say, well, I'm going to want to change the rule in my favor by either promoting my organization or prohibiting your organization to compete with me, then that is where the problem of what we are seeing now. And so
Monsanto's a good example of that.
and they become so big and so strong that they can buy up almost every favor that they can get, and at the same time promote their product or whatever may be used against them, or any laws that might be created to affect them. So they are making sure that those are not going to be passed. Now, a very good example of this is just exactly what you said, Bonnie, and that's TTP. All the companies that are...
The Trans-Pacific Partnership
Right.
Trade Agreement, that just so that everyone knows, that trade agreement encompasses over 40% of the world's trade. 40%.
And these are the members of this partnership, of course, are the 7 countries, primarily the U.S. and Vietnam, by the way, is a member of that.
But it's the corporations
Zealand,
in
Australia.
those countries that are actually writing.
That's right. So the problem is not so much as, well, we are a partner in this, but we are going to be the monopoly of these products that are going to be produced by us, and that the other competitors will not have a level ground to compete with us, because we're going to make sure that they don't even get to our level. We will push them all the way down by not letting them not allowing them to get a loan from the World Bank or something like that.
But it becomes even more complicated, because it's not just a trade agreement. Is really simple. You're country A, I'm country B. I manufacture this, you manufacture that. I would like to buy that, and you want to buy this, so we'll agree. There's no tariff on these products. I can import your products, you can import my products, and we just take the profits from them. That's a simple trade agreement. That's how countries have done it until the rules changed. And all of a sudden, when the rules change, now you have a corporation that says, well, no. I want to make sure, like a pharmaceutical company, I want to make sure that all the medications I decide I'm going to be manufacturing, I can manufacture in those countries. I can manufacture here, no matter where they're manufactured. My patent, the patent for this drug, is going to be for 95 years. So that you have to tell us about that. I can't even remember the guy or what the drug was that just went up from like 30 cents to $5,000 a pill. But that's what will happen, because then they can make a profit. You also have the lawyers that have gotten involved for these corporations that said anyone that impedes the profit of one of our trade country companies could be sued by them, and they can't go to court. Not one of them can go to a U.S. court.
The country that is in violation
of what they consider to be a violation of their ability to make a profit. That is the issue. It's their ability to make a profit. It's not because they broke any law. The country didn't break any law, other than in some way have a regulation like clean air. You know, I mean, we're manufacturing this, but we're polluting the air for that one community. Well, if that community tries to stop us, we can sue them, and we can get a judgment of the millions of dollars that we're going to lose in profits because we have to shut this factory down. That's in this trade agreement. That has nothing to do with trade. It has to do with protecting corporations globally. We're not only having a country that's being controlled by corporations, the entire world will soon just be divided up among McDonald's and Taco Bell. And if you have never seen the movie Idiocracy, that might be a place to start to begin to understand what we're talking about.
Well, so going back, capitalism is not really a form of government, and it is not synonymous with democracy.
It is not.
And unfortunately, we're led to believe that if you are not a capitalist, then you are not for democracy. Capitalism thrives very well in China right at this moment. So who knows? You know, there might be a competition somewhere, But this agreement that we are already signing is really
That's a great point.
going to...
Wow, you just struck me. Capitalism is thriving in China. That is, and you're right. It is thriving in China. You're having, we're making multimillionaires in China with capitalism. Isn't that great? That is so perfect. But and it has nothing to do with democracy. That couldn't be any clearer. Being a capitalist, again, oh wow, you just knocked my socks off with that one.
In any case, there are things that big corporations are doing, and the only way that they can do this, obviously, is to have a major influence in major countries. So, and not only that, but they are going to use the countries that they have a major influence on to bully the smaller country that they don't want to show up as something that they can, that will rise against them. And a very good example for that is the tobacco industry. And you've seen that in the John Oliver's
and that's
show.
not, and those weren't such small countries.
Right.
One of the countries that the tobacco industry sued was Australia.
Yes.
And that's not a small country, you know, because they didn't like the fact that on the packaging, it was required that they actually have an actual picture of a lung, and I mean it was disgusting. But they had to have something that was a real deterrent, not something in small print that you totally ignore when you buy a pack of cigarettes. And because of that, they said, well, their profits were down, so they were able to sue Australia.
Well,
but not through Australia. They did it through
a small country in Europe or something.
In Asia, yeah.
Right. And have that country sue Australia for impeding their ability to make a profit or sell their product, which they're making, and that is the Morris Company.
Yeah, the Philip Morris Company. Unbelievable.
And so, and how can they do that? Well, it's very simple, because they have the backing, of course, of a major country. And how can they get the backing of a major country? Well, they have to be involved with the political process, because everything that comes down to politics, financials as well as political. And so these are all a cycle. Now, maybe this is not so bad after all, Bonnie. Maybe this is where we're going to be headed. Otherwise, we'll all be dying like dinosaurs, because nobody really have a super PAC at that time.
What? All right, that just completely lost me. I mean, I can understand if you said we should just let it go because we can't do anything about it, and we're all going to be dying anyway because they're polluting the environment so badly and ignoring climate change that humanity will be extinct in another 100 years. That I could have bought. I mean, because we've talked about that. When you talked about the extinction event, you even scared me. I mean, I have to admit that scared me. But going back to the Koch brothers, the article that you showed me talked about the party that they held this year, the beginning of the year. They held a party with their 300 contributors that are making up their 900 million, just short of $1 billion. That's how much has been donated already for the 2016 campaign. And I thought this was absolutely unbelievable. They had hundreds of up and coming politicians, rising elected officials. These are the young men and women that are going into the U.S. Senate, that are going into the House of Representatives. And then, of course, they did have a number of the Republican presidential aspiring candidates that were also attending. So they're all mixing with those people that will be in Washington, all getting to know them very well. But then, this is absolutely absurd. They actually have a forum so they can decide which one of the presidential candidates is going to actually get the money. They're going to decide for you who the presidential candidate should be. You don't have to listen to the spiel. You'll just be able to find out who gets the most money from this group, and that's the one that will be on the ballot in November, because nobody is actually listening or looking or talking about what they really believe, except maybe for one candidate who doesn't change his view every 2 minutes. But
Well, it's a facilitator of the young and easily influenced candidate
young and easy, yeah, that's
because
that's sad.
they are the future of the government. I mean, it's no different than probably a rookie in an athletic field that you get. Oh, we're going to groom these guys into becoming good lawmakers. But yes, definitely, it all really boils down to the whole issue of the graft and corruption issue that you want to bring up. Because if a person really has that in him, that he doesn't want to be bought or doesn't want to be influenced, then he does have his own willpower. And no matter what or how much the seduction there is, he can always resist. Well, I'm not really sure I could do that.
I would.
Yeah, and so we are back to exactly what we're talking about, and that is having to run an election, having to do this hard work of being elected every 2 years or every 4 years or every 6 years, whatever that might be the case, and that it takes a lot of money to run it, and if you don't have the money, well, you're very easily seduced. And it is not just from the corporations, but other political parties maybe, or even outside of the United States. And so we have to elect people that we can trust, people that has a record of doing things, primarily for the people, because that's what we sent them there for, and they have to be very transparent. And so if you write to your senators or congressmen about something, don't accept any party line or any
Talking head.
Yeah. Or any what we would call as already drafted response to anything.
Yeah, because they have their own speechwriters.
Exactly.
And the speechwriter has already done all of the research. They know what the polls show. They know what you want to hear, the direction that most of the American people want to go in. I really think that, I don't want to knock any one particular candidate, but there's, if you're a woman, you don't stand up there and just keep playing the woman's card and changing the view of, I get upset when if Hillary believes in the Trans-Pacific Partnership, like she did just several years ago, when she was in charge of making sure that who the person was that was there writing it, giving approval to the corporations that were involved, then say that you're for it. But all of a sudden, when everybody is talking about it now, then she's not for it. You can't vote for the war and that now say, oh, that was a mistake. You look at the situation we're in the Middle East. You were pulled out of your practice. You had to go. You look at the kinds of attitudes that bring our young men and women to war. It is because they don't think, they don't look. Oh, well, we have evidence. Where is the evidence? And that's, to me, what's happening with the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Oh, we need this, but we can't see the entire partnership agreement. We're not allowed to see it. Some kind person has done some leaks. I think we only have 5 of the 29 chapters.
Well, when Hillary was working in the Obama administration, of course, at that time she was the Secretary of State, she came out very strong on supporting this Trans-Pacific Partnership and said that her statement was that this is the future role model of what a partnership and industry should be. And
you've got to remember that it was Bill Clinton that passed NAFTA. He finally got NAFTA pushed through. When you look at what that has done, it has to begin to wake people up.
Well, it does, but you just cannot avoid the fact that what is really the reality in politics today, and that is to run for a position. If you really want to win, then you have to spend a lot of money, and that seems to be the pattern. And I think unless somebody comes up with an idea of preventing the influence from a super PAC into reaching these candidates, then we're going to be just doing this like a cycle over and over and over again.
Except that we do have, I've got to talk about Bernie a bit, because I think that campaign, Bernie Sanders' campaign, is remarkable. The fact that he could raise, almost has equaled what Hillary has been able to raise. He went from like an obscure figure in June of what, maybe 7% of the voters to 24% in July. Now, in many of the polls, he's actually ahead of Hillary, and it depends on which poll you're looking at. They still want to say he's behind in the polls. He's happy to take that position, but none of the money that he has raised has come from a super PAC. When I looked on your website, the one that you told me about, campaignmoney.com, which is a very interesting site, by the way, campaignmoney.com. I looked at Bernie Sanders. Where did this 15 million, it was 15 million, I think, by June. So I looked at where did he get 15 million by June of this year to run his campaign. And not one super PAC, not one. One of the largest donations came from labor. It was like one of the labor organizations donated $1,000 to his campaign. He has actually returned $132,669,000 out of the money that he has raised so far. I know I found where two of those that amount was returned. One gentleman, he's retired, sent him a check for $10,000. I mean, a retired guy decides he knows what's going on, sends him a check for $10,000. Bernie Sanders sends him back a very nice thank you note with, I think $2,500 was the maximum. So he sent back everything but the $2,500 and thanked him very much for the contribution, but reminded him he could not spend more than that on his candidacy. But that's to return. I did not see monies returned from a single other candidate. The most money that he received, because it's broken down by states and then by cities, the most money that Bernie Sanders has received, this was up until June, he received almost $10 million from Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia. And when you look at who in Washington, D.C. gave him the money, because this is not from a PAC, you had almost every department in the federal government, individuals, sending him $250. Some sent in $500. I think there was one lawyer, a number of federal lawyers that gave up to about 2,000, and he's had a few that actually sent in 2,500. But the majority of people in Washington that have watched the man work, that know what he's been voting for over the last 19 years as a congressman and as a senator in Washington, they're the ones who have supported him the strongest. They're willing to put their money because they're tired of seeing Washington actually being swept over. These are average employees, okay, that have actually said, okay, the head of my department used to be the head of Monsanto. The head of my department was the chief lobbyist for the communication industry. The head of my department was the lobbyist for the coal and oil companies. You know, they're looking at what's happening in Washington. And that impressed me a lot. the fact that those are the people who are giving him the money. You look at a state like Connecticut, and yes, the average amount that Bernie has received is like $44. You start putting in 10 million, I didn't see any $44 amounts out of Washington, D.C., but you look at Connecticut and a lot of the other towns, they don't show the amounts that are under $200, which is, you know, for whatever reason, they'd be, for Bernie Sanders, they'd have to be recording a heck of a lot of names. But when the average was $44, that's amazing. You have to understand that many people have just sent him $5.
Well, let me get you to reality, Bonnie, because $44, you will need a lot of $44
Yeah.
to come up
And that's what's happening.
with $7.4 billion.
He doesn't need that, Ben.
In 2008 election, the estimated total cost of that election was $7.4 billion. The 2012 election
16 billion?
was $8.7 billion.
Oh, I thought it was higher than that. I thought it was like 16.
The projected 2016 election, which will be next year, is about probably $12 billion.
$12 billion.
Now, it is estimated that
What a
about...
waste of money.
No, it's not a waste because it comes back to the people. And that's why
No,
I
it
said
comes
that
back to the corporation.
that's why I said that it's a cottage industry. Now, it is
Ben,
estimated...
Please remember where the money comes back to. This is where it comes back to.
I'm going
the sold
to...
corporations.
I'm going to hold mine, even though it might just be temporary. And imagine that out of that billions that was spent, that maybe up to a third or quarter of that are super PAC money. Now, the interesting thing is this, that the super PAC money is not just going to give everything away, their entire bank. By the end of that election year, they are still left with a huge amount of money in their super PAC fund. These are money that are already committed to be spent on the election or influencing people
Right.
as the candidate.
Wonder how that goes, you know?
So it is interesting that this fund that is not yet committed can be so huge. And they have already contributed to the individual candidates. They've already contributed to the party of the state or national party. And yet, at the end of that period, they still have something like $1.8 billion left in their
and
purse.
you know where they spend that?
And that is a big amount of money.
Yeah, and you know where they spend it?
I don't know where it's been.
It's in places like, well, in spite of the fact that 91% of the American people want to see GMO labeling, we want to know what we're eating in our food. Every state that has tried to get that passed that's where the money comes from. Every time you have a state that wants to pass, let's look at the Keystone Pipeline. Where do you think all the money for all the ads and all the wonderful other things that gas and oil are doing, when they have all those, 10 minutes left? This has been really quick. But that's what that money is then used for.
Well, some of the money are used for good, and some of the money stays in the hands of the citizens. I know that I have it in my hand.
Where? Where? You know, I mean, let's look at a company close at home. Let's look at Pfizer, okay?
All right.
I mean, Pfizer, this wonderful pharmaceutical company, gave us great jobs in the area for a while. Then they talked New London into giving them a piece of land by eminent domain. New London took the land, right? And how long did Pfizer stay there? Because they could take the land and not have to pay taxes because it was the agreement. You know how many, I have no idea how many countries Pfizer is operating in now. I have no idea. I know that, you know, you begin looking at what the companies that used to support, none of them are good corporate citizens, except when it comes to corporate welfare. Who's the richest family in the United States?
I would not say it that far, that, you know, most corporations...
they're not good corporate citizens?
A lot of them are really good corporate citizens.
Like Apple?
They do something for...
Wait a minute. Let's go back. Let's talk about...
No, I'm not talking about Apple.
These global corporations that continually shelter their money in Europe so they don't have to pay their taxes in the United States.
I'd say that.
And then they can convince the general American public who doesn't understand the economy that, well, you know, the government's going to raise your taxes. No, the government doesn't want to raise your taxes any more than a single elected official in Norwich wants to raise taxes. Everybody wants to lower them. But you have services that you have to provide. If that newly elected council decides, okay, we're just going to cut the mill rate and cut everyone's taxes, just do it, well, there are going to be services that we won't be able to pay for. Do you know what will happen to our community then? Anybody that can afford it will leave because you don't have any service in this community that's worth staying for. You can't educate your children.
That's going to be some other night's discussion, Bunny,
But
because we are talking about, you know, how major corporations influences how the government and especially the national government. Now, yeah, there are some corporations that are doing very well, and at the same time, there's a lot of contribution to the community. Like? Home Depot, for example. They're very good to the veterans. Every time I go there, they give me a 10% discount. Now, hey, I'm looking at myself now as the recipient of this so-called...
I have not looked specifically at Home Depot. I hope that every employee there gets at least $15 an hour, has some type of a 401k or retirement plan, and they all have health care that's provided by the corporation. I would hope if there's an employee from Home Depot that would like to call and let me know that that is their living standard, that would be great. I mean, we only have about 7 minutes left, but I don't know that for a fact. I do know that at Walmart...
Well, I'd like to hear it from any Walmart employee.
I do today.
The same as I would like to hear from a Pfizer employee or electric boat employee, for that matter.
Like the ones that have lost their jobs and are coming to see you down at the VA?
Or from the casino industry.
Or from all of these people that were veterans that have lost their jobs from just those three. From EB, from the casino, what was the other one? Pfizer? All right, so you've had patients from all three of those corporations, correct? Down at the VA?
Maybe.
Okay, and they're down now. They've never used the VA facility before, but when people lose their job, they don't have good health care because they've cut all of those benefits. They can't afford the drugs because, heaven forbid, the pharmaceutical company... Oh, let's talk about that one drug as an example of what happens when having an extended patent and you can take an old medication, change it up. 0
minute, Bonnie. That's going to be some other time because we're going to talk about drug pricing.
Oh, 5 minutes. All right, we will talk about drug pricing. We've had a request. I know that Senator Austin wants to come on and talk about some things at the state. We're looking forward to having her on. I would like to invite John Bilder to come back to talk about the public utilities. They are looking for a new city manager, so hopefully we'll have John back on with his hat from public utilities coming in. And we have a gentleman from Three Rivers that is very concerned about climate change, as we are, that would like to come on and talk about some of the policies that are really pushing us closer and closer to the edge. So, but we do kind of want people to really understand that there is a reason why government is not serving us. It's not because government's too big or too small. It's because of who the laws that are passed are benefiting. They're not benefiting you and me, and for one simple reason: money. Because when you have your congressmen and your senators depending on these corporations to fund their campaigns, when they're not courageous enough to say, no, I won't take the PAC money, I'll go directly to the people, this is what happens. We do not have to stand for this. And it's not because then we have a president. We've heard lots of things from President Obama before he was elected. And I think you were even hopeful that since it was his last term, you said, no, we'll see him really make these changes. He has nothing to lose. Well, no. He then turns around and appoints the Monsanto person to be our food czar. You can't keep doing this revolving door. We were promised by him that at least that would be closed, never mind that prison down in Cuba. But anyway.
Well, it's another night of good discussion, Bonnie. And so we can probably go on forever ranting and raving about things that are not working.
Well, we don't take it home now.
But what our point is that you are the ultimate person that can change the system, and that is with your pen. And the pen is to vote for the one that you really know who's going to be a good candidate and good.
Right. That isn't bought and paid for. So until next week, I'm Bonnie Hong.
And I'm Ben Hong.
And this is Norwich Confidential, and we'll see you next week.
And
Thank you.
good night.